Hey, I'm joined here tonight by Glenn Guilbeau, who is one of the architects, one of the old timers in the sports journalism world. I know that in new media now at Outkick.com. But I wanted to have him on because he wrote a book and collaborated and really a biography about my coach, Skip Bertman, who you guys know I've spoken about many, many times and the influence he's had on me. But I wanted to dive in on that. I wanted to dive in on the culture of sports today, the pressures that our athletes are facing, and how all those factors are there. So, Glenn, how you doing?
Good, good. Enjoy. Appreciate having me on.
So, one of the things I'd have to go with first, because the people who do listen in Louisiana, is do you hate LSU?
No, I don't. If I hated LSU, I wouldn't do a book on a guy who was a baseball coach and the athletic director there. But
Exactly.
no, I am rough on LSU during certain times, but not all the time. I mean, 2019, I was, a cheerleader basically.
Yeah.
But it just depends on what's going on at the time, and the football program has been going through a bad time for a while now. So that's how it reads right now.
Well, I think what you're talking about too is there's been a really cool transition that's happened in the sports world where you don't have ADs that were coaches. Now, well, Skip was a coach, but that was different. But not the coach that worked his way up, and then it was just the
Not a
the way we've
football
always,
coach.
yeah, football coach who got older and didn't want to do it anymore and is just going to kind of manage.
Yeah.
Now they're entities, they're organizations, and I looked at and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to catch some bullets for it, but I looked at the way the administration was run down there in Baton Rouge for a while there, and if it was a business, it probably would have been turned over by the shareholders. It was some concern
Right
there,
now
and
too,
yeah, yeah,
a little
it's
bit.
a little bit. So, what do you see in the culture down in the Bayou in the LSU world? Then we're going to go to the bigger stage of college athletics, mainly college football. What's going on down there? New coach. You know,
Well, they lost a lot of money through COVID, which is normal and happened everywhere, but they also continued to lose money in the second year. But you can look at it as an investment because that's what Woodward's done. He's
mhm.
paid a lot of money to get a lot of great coaches, and you're just not seeing the results yet. But you will soon. I mean, you definitely Jay
He
Johnson's
has a
going to win the
vision.
title.
He has a
Yeah,
vision.
he does, and Kim Mulkey and Brian Kelly will win a title eventually. He's going to have it rough maybe for a year or two. I say rough, he's still going to win 8 or 9 games, but down the road, Woodward is going to get dividends on his pay. But yeah, the athletic department before Woodward was not run very well between Skip and Woodward. Skip did a great job, particularly coming in when he did. And they had issues off the field, as we all know, with the Title IX lawsuits. But Scott Woodward kind of inherited that. So I think eventually it'll get turned around to be really good again.
When you look at a really solid organization or football team, let's we can kind of compare the two of those. What do you see? What are some of the factors that you go, that's a well-oiled machine that they take care of the things the right way? What do you see from a reporting standpoint?
With football, particularly.
Yeah, with football and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
kind of athletic departments.
Well, I would say with football, it's the depth chart and recruiting in a balanced way and filling the roster like a personnel director would do in the NFL. In
Mm,
fact, Saban once said while he was at LSU to me that he sees himself as a personnel director because they don't have that title in college really, so he just kind of
right.
did it. And that's how he is. You got to recruit 2 or 3 years down the road. That's what Skip did. Skip was always doing stuff 2 or 3 innings down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, and when you do that, your roster's good. You don't have these inexplicable holes in your roster and like that. And that's how LSU was for a long time up until just a couple of years ago in football.
When you look at where the colleges are going with the different, conferences. You've got the SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma. There was chatter over the summer of adding in, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Miami. You got the Big Ten adding the West Coast teams. Who's going to lose here, and what do you see it play out as? Because we just announced the 16 team playoff, which I think is fantastic. But
12 team playoff. Yeah.
12 team, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic too. I thought they'd go to 8 first, but they jumped from 4 to 12. Now I hope that they decrease the number of regular season games to 11 and maybe even 10 if have an option for 10, but there's too much money at stake. But you
Yeah.
don't need all these non-conference games now, and I don't even know if you need the SEC championship games and the like now, because that's going to start to be
But the SEC
meaningless.
is the only one that makes money, right? I mean, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
but you can make money with the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I guess they'll lose money if they get rid of it, but it starts to be a job instead of a great game. It's going to be something that gets in the way. It's going to be a nuisance. I'm trying to think. But as far as the college, the conferences adding teams, I'm not really sure what they're going to lose from that. I think they're losing a lot in college football from the NCAA transfer portal and from NIL. I think that's more dangerous. I think adding teams is not necessarily a bad thing. They've actually been doing that, for years and years. It's happened more lately, but I think that's just going to add to the money of the television contracts, which is the television contracts is why the coaches started getting paid so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't have the game at 11:30 on Saturday mornings that it looked like it was in standard definition, and was it the JP game? And you're like, God, I hope I don't have to play on that game because you can't see anything. And now everything is on demand and ready to go and ready to rock. And because of the SEC network, you also see all sports played across the board, which is
Sure.
really good for exposure. It's interesting, the transfer portal facet. I've always believed the transfer portal is there because of mental health issues. It gives the waiver without having to disclose that you want to leave. If you're unhappy, you kind of got a raw deal, something like that. But there's got to be some limits and some windows, right? I mean, you can't just let a kid who gets beat out in summer all of a sudden transfer,
Right.
or something
By
like that.
definition, by definition, it's a good idea. And really, the graduate transfer portal worked perfect
Yes.
because there's a guy who he tried everything and he's still not playing. Okay, well, give me one shot. All right, that worked for Joe Burrow. It would have worked for Matt Flynn, but he stuck. But now they're just leaving too quick. I think you ought to at least have to stay at your school for 1 year before you can transfer, maybe even 2. Because you got kids now 3 months into the season. The season happened at Alabama last year. Guy's not playing, so he thinks he's going to transfer, and he's not practicing as hard. Nick had some injuries late, needed those kids, didn't have them. But the bottom line is, as an 18-year-old, you can't make a decision to leave that quick.
Right. But here's the question then. As a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, are you smart enough to be able to make a decision for the next 5 years of your life?
Well, next 2 years, because you can transfer after
true.
2 years or after 1 year,
Yeah.
But most, I think most of the time, if you stick it out a little while, it's better. But in the old days, you got to stick it out for 5 or 6 years. Well, that's been changed a little bit. You can leave. I think the perfect thing would be to be able to leave after a full year or year and a half or 2, and you can only leave once.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to happen. Other people are going to leave.
Change.
If you wait, look at Matt Flynn. He waited. He got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are the good stories. I mean, you look at Mac Jones, same way. He could have easily left from Alabama, and he sticks it out. Now he's in the NFL.
And the bad thing, Brett, is, and this hasn't been written about, and I'm trying to find out about it. There's a lot of kids who entered the portal. Nobody picked them up. They're not playing anywhere right now. There's a lot.
I want to say the most recent data I looked at is 49% of kids that entered the portal have ended up somewhere.
That's 51% that haven't.
Yeah, I think the numbers are overwhelmingly in the majority for people who have not ended up somewhere.
Wow.
And in some defense of that, you also have some individuals that go into the portal that are non-scholarship athletes who, had walked on and things. And so there is a little bit of the cleaning up of the data that needs to happen. But reality is that, when you're in the transfer portal, that's what I tell all my players, it's the only thing that you control during your college experience is that the right to transfer. But the right to transfer has consequences, because once you put your name in, now you've told the coach you don't necessarily want to be there. And now I'm going to backfill that person. And they're just going to use the transfer portal like a free agency too. And so they have an opportunity to backfill. I think if a coach changes, let's say your head coach gets fired or moves on, I think putting your name in the transfer portal is a brilliant idea because it gives you flexibility, allowing yourself to see who the new coach is and see if I like them or not. And if not, then I have control to go somewhere else, and it's no hard
Right.
feelings. But
Right.
I think there needs to
Unless
be
you
some
really like
guidelines.
the school. Unless you really
Yeah,
like
now
the
if you
school.
really like the school, yeah, I mean,
And
no
we
doubt about
forget
that.
that part. We forget
Yeah,
that part.
yeah. I think when you're in sports where there's a professional league that pays a lot of money, the school is always we want it to be primary, but the reality is how fast can I get to the next level in basketball, baseball, football?
But that's
Um,
only 5%, right, of the
that's a very
athletes.
small percentage, right? Yeah, so it's really unique. All right, so let's talk about Skip Bertman. So Skip was, for the people who are listening, this was my coach for 5 years. I was a project kid. I was a kid that had no other college offers and ended up at LSU, which was shocking. Played 1 year of
And you
varsity
didn't
baseball.
transfer. You didn't enter
You
the
know what?
portal, Brett.
Well, I could have. I could have. You know, what was funny was Smoke Laval had left after my third year, and going into my
Right.
third year, I had mono in my sophomore year. I was a late bloomer, so I'll just give you the story. So, and for our listeners, when I was brought in, Skip saw a 6'5" guy, 210 pounds, who didn't have a lot of innings on his arm because I grew really late and I was young. And
Right.
said, "Look, come to LSU. You'll redshirt your freshman year, and after the freshman year, then we'll kind of see. But you probably are not going to be good enough until your third year."
Right.
And I stuck around
How
for my
honest.
sophomore year. Obviously, we won the national title, traveled, and those guys are, I hold that national title ring as valuable as one, when I played a ton in '94 and '95 when we didn't win crap. Um, but I come back and then I get mono and miss 6 weeks of the year, and I wasn't going to play. I wasn't good enough. But when I came back going into my junior year, I was really, really good, and it happened just like Skip said. I mean, the guy was a
Wow.
unbelievable seer of the future. And then I
Yes.
got hurt. I hurt my shoulder, and I ended up only playing about 10 innings that year when we won the national title in '93. And then during that summer, I started working on the mental game and learning how to like salvage what I was doing. And that's when I played my last 2 years. But Smoke Laval had left after the '93 season and said, "Hey, look, if you want to transfer to Northeast Louisiana, you'll be one of our top pitchers."
Right.
And I had a
Yeah.
I had a mindset which was, if I can't pitch here, I don't want to pitch anywhere. I wanted to figure out a way to play there. I didn't really believe. I mean, I wanted to. I thought I would, but I didn't think I would have. I mean, I did well, and it was shocking. But I didn't. I wanted that to happen there because I had grown up loving LSU. I remember going to games with, watching Greg Patterson and Dan Kite and Stan, Stan Lower and Mark Guthrie and Albert or Joey Bell and all those guys. And so to me, going to play anywhere else just really wasn't what I wanted to do. I'd rather stick it out at LSU and try and do it there. And so, I got to see the good, the bad, and every aspect of it at LSU baseball. Not that there was many bad; it was just tough. So, what
Right.
did you learn by
Right.
covering Skip? Now, you've covered him forever.
Well, Skip was he didn't seem like the big time coach that he was when he spoke to you. I mean, he's just a regular guy. I mean, he's every man. He really is.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I would say he's usually the smartest guy in the room. But even though I was at the Alexandria Town Talk through the early part of his career, he treated me like I was at Sports Illustrated or something. That's how he was. He treated all the writers like that because he's a nice guy to begin with. He's a nice guy, but he's also a salesman, and he just knows that he can help spread the word of his program by talking nicely and with information to reporters, any reporter. And that's the first thing that struck about me, that struck me about him. And then it was so much fun to cover the team because the other teams weren't that good.
Yeah.
At the time in the early '90s, the football team was in 6 straight losing seasons. So Omaha
I mean,
was
people don't, and people got to understand. You look at Tiger Stadium with 100 and something thousand. I remember going to maybe a Utah State game or something back then, and I think we lost. Or there was some game like that. There were 45,000 people in that stadium.
yeah, yeah,
Like shockingly bad. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. And and really the way Skip made a baseball game such a happening, and there's a chapter in the book about the 1990 NCAA regional against USC. That's when Alex Box became Alex Box, because that's when they just started selling out everything. And before that regional, Skip told the fans and told the media, we got to get the word out. We got to sell this place out so we can have a regional every year. And that's exactly what happened, as usual.
Yeah,
unbelievable. They never didn't have one again. So that was just really fun watching it go from small to huge. And I was at, I covered his first season for the Tiger Egg magazine. And then I covered his last season for the Baton Rouge Advocate in 2000 and 2001, his last championship, and then his athletic director years at USA Today, Louisiana. So I was lucky to be around for most of his career.
There's a chapter in the book, and the book we're talking about is Everything Matters in Baseball, the Skip Bertman story. And it's really cool because, yep, right there, 2 years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing a podcast interview with Greg Sankey, and we had gone up, and one of the guys that works for me is my right-hand man, Brett Basham, played baseball at Ole Miss under Mike Bianco. So he's part of our family tree. So he understands what we're talking about. And I was talking with Commissioner Sankey, and Herb Vincent was there, and they'd kind of organized it. And, obviously Herb is the right-hand man of the SEC now, but is one of the best SIDs and just was around our program all the time. And we were talking about
Skip first started. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about Skip. And Commissioner Sankey was like, yeah, we watched this documentary that was done on Warren Morris, who hit the 1996 home run. And we just couldn't get over how good Skip was on TV. And I'm like, y'all got to do a freaking documentary on this guy because we're going to lose this guy, right? If he was in basketball, there'd have been 7 books and 7 stories written about this guy.
Exactly.
I mean, he is in the Pat Summitt, Skip Bertman, Sarah
Wooden.
Patterson, John Wooden. I mean, the Mount Rushmore of innovative coaches. And then I was so happy to see the Rope story came out. And then this book comes out. And there's a chapter that you talk about some of the tenets of his program. And I have to find it, but there were about 12 different items. And it caught me because, I sat in those meetings and I sat in those things. And it's so funny when me and my teammates get together, we sit there and we talk about the things that we learned in those Yellow Book meetings. And we still apply them to today. In the first book I wrote, in the Mindset Manifesto, I talked about anything you ardently desire, sincerely believe in, vividly imagine, and enthusiastically act upon must come to pass. We used to make fun of them standing in the outfield, and yet they're part of our DNA now. Like, I can't get rid of that crap. I mean, it's like listening to a guy that's been in the military 20 years later still wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's what military men do. Well, that's what we do. And so, I'm sitting here reading Skip's Secrets to Success in this, and it's like, you got the law of averages, right? These are so simple that as coaches, if you're listening to this, it's like, don't make things freaking complicated.
How about a left-hander to throw batting practice? Who knew? It's like he was the only one doing that. It's the simplest, most common sense thing, and it worked.
So there was a time, I can remember, there was a play that happened in one of the World Series games after I was done playing. But I remember we were on, Thursday nights or Friday nights when we were on the road, we'd have these late night practices. And Skip didn't have any regard for the 20-hour work week. I'm just going to tell everybody out there, okay? But there was not one player that really complained about it if they were playing well, okay? It's what we did. It's what we chose to do. And we'd sit there at night, and he would practice this thing. If a left-handed pitcher is pitching, got a runner at first and third and less than 2 outs. And it was this essential, like a way to steal home. We worked that thing all the time. I only saw him do it one time in a World Series game 3 or 4 years later. I'm like, that son of a bitch. I mean, that's how his mind was. It was unbelievable.
You had to have those bullets, the extra bullets, just in case. Never used them hardly.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to ask names if it does come up, but did you come across any former player that was like, no, I don't want to talk about him?
Oh, no. No, I did not.
Isn't that crazy?
Like Eddie Furnace did not get back to me, but the other guy said he had something going on,
Yeah. No, Eddie loves Skip. So that's not it.
Yeah. He's like one of the only guys that didn't get back to me. And then, there was a couple of players who talked to me, but, they didn't necessarily believe everything that Skip said, and they kind of criticized him a little bit, but they had a good point. But that was very isolated. Like I'll tell you what one player said,
Mm-hmm.
and it was funny, really. Skip kind of thought a couple of his national championship teams weren't that good. Like the
Mm-hmm.
93 team, he didn't think they could do it. He thought the 91 team had some issues, and they ended up winning. And one of the players said, well, that's how Skip is. He says they're not going to be that good, but when they are, then he gets the credit. But that's not entirely true.
No,
I thought it was funny when he said that, but Skip's not trying to cover himself. He just seems to be negatively motivated, much like Nick Saban. He was like, oh God, this is terrible. He thought they were going to lose the whole time in College Station. It wasn't so he'd get credit. He was just kind of worried is all, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a very famous situation that happened in 1991 with Joe Macaluso, who wrote an article about this team won't make it to Omaha. Eat Crow Joe. And we all believed after the fact that was a planted article, that Skip needed to motivate us because we were uberly talented, but were very distracted by the draft and own purposeful things. And he had to get us back galvanized as a team. But he was a master motivator of understanding what each person needed. I mean, at the time, we had Lyle Mouton, who was setting the world on fire, Gary Email. You had multiple major league pitchers on that roster. You had Paul Byrd and Chad Auger that ended up getting drafted by the same organization one round apart. And he just had a very interesting way of keeping everybody motivated. And you may curse him at the time you're in it, but he was a puppet master.
Oh, yeah. No question about it. And I'm sure there's some players that maybe didn't like him that much while they were playing for him, but when you look back years later, they're grown up, they're more mature, they respect him more. I felt that way about some teachers I had in high school.
Yeah, I was about to say that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay.
That's the same thing. And I remember Brady James did not like Nick Saban at all when he played football for him at LSU. But then a couple of years later, when he was with the Cowboys, Brady was at more Alabama events with Nick than he was at LSU events. So you grow up and you realize it.
It's a good point. And kids today they want to like their coach so much, but
that's
a coach that's going to get you out of your comfort zone. You're not going to like them. You're going to respect the hell out of them, right? When it's over, and maybe you'll understand it. What was when it was funny? I was at an event one night. This was about 15 years ago. Baseball coach comes up, coach in college, and he was like, what was it like playing for LSU? And I kind of said, we were a bunch of kids that were local, and we had national people, but we had local drive. And he's like, what are you talking about? You had the most talented kids in the country every year.
Yeah, that's not true.
Not true at all, is it?
No. I mean, now he had some hugely talented kids at times, but Todd Walker, Joey Bell, who should be in the book more, let's see, Chad Auger was not first. He kind of developed him.
Yeah, and Todd was
most of the players he developed. He really did.
Yeah, well, and Todd was good when he came in. Todd got great when he was in his first fall. I mean, it was he figured something out. Skip knew how to deal with him, and all of a sudden he became the best hitter that LSU's ever seen.
Yeah. Now he had some talented. Paul Byrd was pretty talented on arrival. Ben McDonald was very talented on arrival, but he could develop great prospects into major league prospects, and he could develop the okay and good prospects into great prospects, into great players, maybe not make the majors. Like Hunter Gomez, one of the top pitchers on the 2000 team. He was never going to play in the majors, but Skip got him to be good in college. He could just develop the gamut of players.
Yeah. What did you when he transitioned obviously to the athletic director role, that was unheard of in college sports. A baseball coach did not ascend in a Power 5 school to an athletic director role. He came in, he bridged a gap that was necessary within the LSU athletic department during a fight between boosters and the president. Exactly. And yet he stepped right in, and it was almost like he was made for that role, wasn't he?
He was a compromise hire by Mark Emmert, because Mark Emmert wanted another athletic director who ended up at
Mitch Barnhart,
Kentucky. Mitch Barnhart, right? And the
See, I read the
LSU,
book. I read the book.
yeah, okay. The LSU people wanted Doug Moore, and Emmert, brilliant move. I mean, Emmert's the guy who hired Nick Saban, and put Skip in there, and it was so funny because everybody told Skip as he was coming up as a coach, when he would try to get more money for baseball or try to come up with an idea, they would always tell him, "You're just a coach."
Hmm.
Skip, you're just a coach. Joe Dean told him that a lot. Wayne Huizenga told Skip that when Skip told Huizenga, Nick's not going to last in the NFL, Wayne, and he was right about that too.
Yeah, he
But
was.
so here's this guy who's always just a coach, and he becomes an athletic director. And he brought in the ticket licensing program for football, which nobody wanted to do. They were all afraid to do it. He was able to do it. But one of the most important things he did was bring the coaches together like they were a team. Usually coaches don't feel like that in the total athletic department, like they're all one. And Skip kind of did that a little bit, in addition to coming up with genius parking plans. That's in the book.
Yep.
Dan Radakovich says that Skip loved parking. It was a way to make money.
Yes.
So
There's another way to charge people.
Yeah, he's a marketing genius. He's marketing the book right now. He took over the marketing of the book. He's a genius at marketing. He really is.
Yeah, it's funny. He took a situation at LSU when the LSU fan base was very grandfathered in, and it was the way it's always been, and he brought it to a new level. There's very few people who could do that in the state and get away with it.
Oh, no question. And he also started the football program playing the in-state schools, and they're playing Southern on Saturday. Yeah. That all started with Skip, because he was like, why are we bringing Appalachian State all the way in here when we could be bringing McNeese? Let those people, they're from Louisiana, let them come to the LSU campus. A lot of people that go to Southern have never been to the LSU campus.
Yeah.
So that was a genius thing, and he did that with baseball. He always played every state school in baseball.
Yeah, we did.
He brought that to football, and they followed him.
When you look at his coaching mindset, could it coach in today's game?
Oh, I think so. I think he could have coached a good 10 years after he
there's no doubt about that. We look back and think
do.
He retired at like 62, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 61.
Well, he looked. Let's be honest. Skip always looked older than he was. That was his wisdom. Yeah. But it's really shocking to think. I mean, he walked away at age 62, and that's really, for a lot of coaches, it's in the prime of their game.
Yeah. Yeah, and he almost left before that. He was thinking of leaving a couple of years before he left. But, he did walk into a good job and more money than he ever made as baseball coach, as athletic director. So he had a nice swan song there. But, no, he everybody said, oh, the game got so much better and you can't win all those national champions. Well, you've still had some multiple national champions since Skip left. The South Carolina coach did it. The Oregon State coach did it. I think there's some other ones.
Corbin's been there quite a bit.
Yeah, Corbin's not 2 in a row, but he's had 2. I think Skip could have kept winning them because, nobody is better during the game as far as calling pitches and developing pitchers. And you don't see this as much anymore. He was developing that fourth starter, that third starter, another reliever. He was doing that the whole season, and too many coaches are afraid to lose those midweek games. Skip didn't care about the midweek games. He was building that pitching staff, and he could have. He didn't really ever. I mean, he had people recruit for him, and he kind of came in at the end. He could have kept doing that. I think he'd have kept winning. I really do.
You talk about winning. Playing the midweek games. If a coach now doesn't play well in a midweek game, the LSU fans want to hang him out to dry, right? Because Skip never lost those and all that other stuff. Our fans' expectation. Oh, heck yeah, we lost those.
Yeah, lost.
Heck yeah.
Time.
I mean,
people would get on him.
Louisiana College beat us. I mean, when I played, I didn't play in that game. If our fans' expectations out of control right now?
Well, I mean, I think Smoke Laval got the worst of that because he was to follow Skip, and he went to Omaha twice. But I think he had the most pressure on him because Skip had just won it all in 2000, nearly went to Omaha in '01. Then the program sagged a little bit, and Maneri won it in '09, and then never got back after 17. So I don't think the expectations are crazy like they used to be. Now Jay Johnson was kind of supposed to come in and go right to Omaha with that roster. He didn't quite make it. So
kind of missed some pitching.
Kind
of missed a little bit of pitching.
Yeah,
pitching,
he did.
Yeah,
but he'll probably get there next year. I mean, I think he's going to be really good, but he's a little removed from that Skip pressure, I would say.
Okay. When you look at like college, when you look at like stress, and then obviously, one of my big platforms is mental health among student athletes and the depression and the stress. And fortunately, you and I were talking about ahead of time, did an interview for the Today Show, which was, I never thought I'd be on the Today Show for something positive. So I think that's really good. But we look at this, and I don't know how much you've really paid attention to it, but when you look at the college athlete today and the pressure they're under, what do you see as, do you see this as a problem compared to what you covered when I was playing in that era?
Well, I would say that there's more advantages to be a college athlete now. I mean, with the NIL money, with the portal, there's more sensitivity toward players from coaches now. I mean, coaches treat players better now because players are just different. I mean, back in the day, I mean, they didn't really care what a player's feelings were or how much water he had. I mean, I remember salt tablets. You might be too young for that, but they didn't know.
No. I remember we used to have to run the godforsaken 2-mile run under 14 minutes. Yeah. Thankfully, my freshman year, it would always be August 20th. And thankfully, my freshman year, they switched it from running it on the track, 8 laps around the track, to out on the asphalt down River Road. But I'll tell you what, I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was, it was terrible. It was a mind game more than anything else, but God, it was terrible.
Well, I just think there's a lot more awareness for mental health now, obviously, and there's a lot more avenues for players, athletes, students who aren't athletes to seek help at a college, whereas maybe 20 years ago there wasn't as much, and the big football programs like Alabama with you, I mean, there's a lot of mental health experts that can speak to players. So I think they have more of an advantage now than that. And
what do you think the role of social media is there?
Well, that probably, I was just going to say, that puts pressure on players that players back in the day didn't have to ever think about. Kid misses a field goal, or kid gets an extra point blocked. Well, or the kid gives up a block that caused the blocked extra point. That's going to be on Twitter. That's going to be on social media. So that's terrible. I mean, guys back in the day didn't have to worry about that.
Now I was in school with Jamie Howard.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a fraternity burned a car with his name on it.
And there was a radio personality in Baton Rouge who jumped all over him.
Yeah. Jamie and I were in class together, and I remember having to, we met outside, and I got to know Jamie really well that year. And because I'd pitched well the year before, and so now I was actually could talk to other athletes because I had success. And got to really know Jamie during that time. And that was tough. That was brutal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it would have been even more tougher on Jamie
now
with social media. But, like Leonard Fournette said in an interview this morning, that he had a bad game in his opener against Wisconsin in Houston, if you remember that game, the season opener. And he saw all kind of stuff about him on Twitter and social media. And he told Frank Wilson he wanted to transfer. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
That's just something that's, because, when that starts happening and your name's all over social media, you got to have a thick skin to be able to handle that.
And I think it's important for fans. Yeah. Well, I think it's important for fans to know too. Sometimes when our hometown favorite goes to a school out of state, there's more to it than just, they got something. Sometimes they're getting away from that pressure cooker. And I know fans go, I don't understand. I bled purple and gold or crimson and white or orange and blue. But sometimes a kid likes to go somewhere and not have everybody in their town knowing every stat that they have and living or dying on their success and failure.
And sometimes people just want to leave home, you know,
100%. Yeah.
manifest destiny. Just do something different. New group
Yeah.
of friends, new geography. You can always come back home. And I think that enters the picture. That's why I never really mind when coaches leave jobs either.
No.
Because
Mm-mm.
it's always exciting to get a new job. It's good for your mental health to get a new job in a new place. Maybe not every year, but that is healthy. So I like when kids do that. I really like Arch Manning going to Texas. And they might not
Yeah.
even be that good for a while.
Yeah. The Manning family, I think, has always been very smart. I know fans have always wanted the Manning kids to be at LSU, but the reality is their dad is a legend in New Orleans for a reason. He stuck through the thick and thin, and he doesn't want his kids raised with that expectation, even though that last name is going to hold it. I think people need to understand that. Like, get out, fight for your job where you're not every decision that you're made is following that. There's already enough pressure with your last name of Manning.
Right. And really, when Peyton came out of school and when Arch came out of school, LSU was not any good.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was the
they were
Josh Booty
coming off.
effect. It was a little bit of a Josh Booty effect.
Yeah, that was in there too. But
Yeah.
and when Eli came out, Eli wasn't really a great prospect.
No.
I don't even know if LSU really recruited him that much. They were
But
pretty
that was when
set.
Booty was leaving professional baseball.
Yeah, and you had Davey already. Yeah, so yeah, it just didn't work out. But no, and Cooper went to Ole Miss too before he got hurt. But and Peyton, blazed by going to Tennessee. I always had a lot of respect for him for that.
Yeah. Where do you see college sports in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, are you going to see? Do you believe that the football landscape is going to go in its own private entity type of thing? Like I've heard the rumors.
Yeah, that's been around for years. Everybody says that, but who's the other governing body? The NCAA has problems, but they're the only one you got. When you have trouble with local police, you go to state police. If
Hmm.
the state police can't have it, you have the FBI. Well, there's only one body for college sports. It's the NCAA. College football playoff handles a playoff, but and really to me, the NCAA still does a very good thing. They make sure that all these sports that don't make any money, that nobody goes to watch, all those kids are still on scholarship. Nobody goes to see volleyball and women's golf, but those kids are on
Yeah.
scholarship. That's because of football, and that's because the NCAA does that. The NCAA does a lot of things wrong. They probably take in too much money, and it needs to be repaired. But I still think it's your only option for a while. Um, and I think NIL and I think the portal is going to kind of work itself out a little bit, but they're going to need to tweak it, and they're also going to have to put some more parameters and rules on the NIL because it's not sustainable the way it is right
Do you
now.
think the market will stop that though? Do you think the market, when
Yes,
when
it
businesses
will.
look at it and go, "What are we
I'm not
doing?"
giving this money. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. My concern with NIL is simply this: is that there's only so many pots of money for the athletic departments to get to. And we've
Right.
seen this explosion of coaching salaries and also resources, which I think are very critical. And the TV money's big. But when boosters have to make a decision between a new building or a certain set of players, they're always going to gravitate towards the player because they feel like they have more influence there. They
Yeah.
get to know them. There's a inside game type of thing. And I
Yeah.
think athletic departments are going to look at that and are going to fight that a little bit of, the regular way that we have donations. And I think it's a great thing for college athletics, but it's like, we need a certain, I mean, God almighty, look at the University of Florida, the new facility they have, and that makes ours at Bama already out of date. I mean, you just cannot keep up. And kids are going to go on recruiting visits and go like, oh my God, look, you've got XYZ at Florida. I'm over here at Bama. I mean, it's old. And it's only 2 years
Yeah.
old.
But what if that kid at the old uh, athletic facility has a better NIL deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the heck of the facility. I mean,
Yeah.
so but yeah, rich people are rich because they don't blow money, and they're not going to continue to blow money on sports teams that don't keep winning. That's
Yeah.
they're going to get tired of that. I think so. Something's going to have to change with that, I believe.
What's one lasting thing that you take from being around Skip for so long that you look back and say, you didn't play for Skip, but you were around him. And one thing about Skip, he's kind of like Coach Saban. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, he's going to teach you. I mean, they're coaches ultimately.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just his way of predicting the future. I'll remember and knowing which players are going to make it. He said Ryan Terrio when Ryan Terrio was a freshman. He said he's going to play in the major leagues.
He told me that.
Yeah.
After their very first weekend, sitting in his house in his carport office, he's got his feet up. It was after literally the Sunday night game. We had gone over to his house for something, and we're sitting there, he's smoking a cigar, and he goes, that Ryan Terrio kid's going to play in the major leagues.
Yeah. Yeah, because he was such a good fielder, and
Yep.
he hit well enough. He was going to make it. He knew the guys that were going to make it, and I one of the most fun things about the book was I sat at Skip's kitchen table at his house probably 15 times talking about various subjects, and that's I'll always remember that because as he's in his early 80s and he's had some health issues, but always sharp, great memory for detail, and that's what I'll always remember.
For those of you who are listening, you want more information, you pick it up at Acadiana House, which is a link, and we'll include that. And it's Everything Matters in Baseball. Listen, I've talked about Skip forever. You guys know my feelings about him. Shapes me where I'm at, who I am, everything about him. Guys, there are so many lessons to be learned about the way Skip Bertman went about business that can happen in life and coaching and everything. It's really remarkable. And so kudos to getting this book out. I know there's been a lot of attempts to capture him, but you've been able to get it out there and tell the story. And then there's a very powerful chapter in there about the secrets behind Skip. So
Skip showed a lot of patience with me. He showed a lot of patience with me to get it done. He put a little pressure every now and then, but not like I was one of his players. But he was very patient and understanding.
Yeah, well, when you smell cigars in the middle of the night and that man is still influencing you, then it's so funny when all the alums get together and the stories start telling. And the best story was when Facebook was kind of hot and groups started. We started an Alex Box locker room, and the story started telling, and then all of a sudden somebody let him in, and we had kind of debated about it. We're like, all right, let the man in. And then he sits back.
I wish I'd known about that before the book.
Oh, shit. It was bad, man. It was, the stories are funny. And what unfortunately happened, I'll just say this, what happened was the players that played pre-Skip loved the stories, and we always valued. That was one thing about Skip, and any coach that's listening to this, never forget the legacy that preceded you. He made sure that the teams before us were still responsible for the success that we had, and they felt that ownership of that program. And we're telling all these stories, and it kind of alienated a little bit of the Maneri players that were alums at that point because it was so Skip heavy. But he gets on there one night and just like, boys, don't forget, you think you have stories on me. I've got more dirt to bury every single one of you. And he could dish it as hard as anybody else. He could rip you a new one. But this is the last thing I'll say about him. This is the confidence that he had. We're getting ready to play. It's not in the book, and I don't know how many people know this, but we're getting ready to play Southern Cal in the regional finals in 1994. And the storied story, which you talk about in 1990 with Brett Boone and all this, or Aaron Boone, was it? No, it was Brett. Aaron was there in 94.
Right.
So Aaron's there, and they have a kid by the name of Jock Jones who hit 3 home runs in the final. I was happy to give up the first one. But all this other stuff, right? But as you're getting ready to play the game, it's 97 degrees. It's humid as hell. It's noon on a Sunday. People are lined up down River Road towards River Road. And we're getting ready to go play, and he gives us the talk and goes, but guys, remember, they don't have me in their dugout.
That's true.
And it was true.
That's very true. Yes.
Mike Gillespie was a Hall of Fame coach, but he wasn't Skip Bertman. I mean, it's,
right.
And I think that just speaks to his confidence, his belief of what he did. And that's why we all ran through a wall for him. I mean, he never lost a championship game.
Armando Rios said the same thing. We got Skip in the dugout. He said that before both of his title games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
He was the man. There's no question. That was the clearest advantage.
Yeah, never lost a championship game. That's crazy. We lost a SEC West championship my senior year when we couldn't win the SEC. That didn't matter to him. And then he lost his last regional game. But before that, he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
undefeated.
And you know, he would have won in 1987 with Joey
Yep.
Bell, but he made. I wish that was in the book, but he made the ultimate decision there, and the players wanted it too. They had to let Joey go. He probably would have
Yeah.
won it that year, and could have won it in '98 as well,
Yeah.
and
Correct.
possibly could have won it in '89. He says he should have changed his pitcher rotation. Should have pitched Leskanic at a
Yeah.
certain point to the McDonald,
Yeah. I
but
don't. I
that would
don't.
have
I
been
don't
eight.
disagree with that. Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think it was very fascinating to watch him work, and he simplified when we got in bigger moments. He didn't overcoach.
Right.
He was comfortable with what he did, and he knew how to get us motivated. So I'm glad you were able to capture that. And listen, y'all, pick up the book. And I think you'll really enjoy it and understand and get a little glimpse of what we do. And in a dynasty era before before we were all fascinated with these dynasties that are out there.
Right, exactly. 5 and
Well,
10. That's pretty good. Thanks
that's
a lot, Glenn.
unbelievable. You got it, Glenn. Thank you so much.